Don't you worry about a thing. Don't you worry about a thing.
All right, well, that's a nice setup for our next story. It's the cover story in this week's edition of Bloomberg Business Week, on newsstands soon, but you can find it online and on the Bloomberg terminal right now. Sean Donnan wrote it. He is senior trade reporter for Bloomberg. Joining us from Washington here in our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio is Joel Weber, the editor of the magazine. So, Sean, someone who apparently, at least outwardly, doesn't worry about much, Mr. Optimism, you call him, is the president's chief economic advisor, Larry Kudlow. Tell us about spending a very interesting morning with him.
Yeah, so on Tuesday morning, and this is something that we had set up some weeks ago, I rolled up to the White House around 10 o'clock to go sit down with Larry Kudlow for a profile that Joel had asked me to work on, I guess, about a month or so ago.
With great foresight.
Yeah. I want that crystal ball.
In this amazing turn of events, the day before or a few days before, they had changed the time of the interview to that morning. And so here I am at the gates of the White House, and all of a sudden at 10 o'clock, the Federal Reserve, for the first time since the global financial crisis in 2008, decides to roll out an emergency rate cut. And I'm walking into the White House to go sit down with President Trump's top economic advisor, Larry Kudlow, and you get into his office, and what you discover, it is this kind of bit of men's club serenity, this kind of wood-paneled cocoon without a TV, a computer, or a Bloomberg terminal. And we proceed to have 90 minutes almost, great conversation and so on. But the amazing thing is the world and markets are melting down outside, and here you are inside the West Wing of the White House, and there is this man who is right now probably the biggest professional optimist in Washington, and he's telling you his view of the world, and very simply, that view is everything's going to turn out okay, and that's not necessarily how markets see it, of course.
And I think interesting to that because Mr. Kudlow doesn't have maybe the greatest track record of calling things correctly all the time, right, Sean? Like there was a certain moment before the housing crisis that he also was rather optimistic and buoyant about, and that didn't work out so well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And when our story hit this morning, there were some folks out there on Twitter who were seeing this as a kind of sell signal in some ways. Larry Kudlow in December 2007 famously dismissed any idea that the U.S. would be descending into a recession. Of course, we now know that is the exact month that the biggest recession this country has seen since the 1930s hit, and Larry got that one very wrong. He has had a track record that isn't great. He acknowledges that. He says not all of my forecasts have been right. It's a bit of an understatement. But there's something interesting about Larry Kudlow in that there's something very personal about his optimism, and I think that's something that makes this an even more interesting moment for him.
Well, that's what I think is interesting about this story. You talk about your time, sitting down with him, this week in the White House, but it's interesting. You do go into his backstory, and you're right. His optimism is a trait he acquired in the aftermath of what he calls, quote, my personal crash and burn. Go back to 1994, go back a few decades. I mean, this guy did have a crash and burn.
Yeah, so Larry Kudlow had this amazing rise on Wall Street. I think he was named in 1979 the chief economist of Bear Stearns at age 32. He went off to work in the Reagan administration, came back to Bear Stearns where he was chief economist again. And then in 1994, he had this parting of the ways with Bear Stearns. It was mysterious until he came out in a New York Times article and said basically that he had lost his job and his career to addiction to alcohol and cocaine, and proceeded to really have a spectacular crash. He had a relapse a year later. He then, in this amazing way, discovers Catholicism after spending 5 months in Minnesota at a rehab facility, and as part of that, embraces in some ways, this optimism that we talk about. It's kind of self-survival.
Right.
Which, I mean,
self-care for him.
Just to bring it back to capitalism and America, it's like long-term view, optimism. That is the right one. Just juxtaposed with the moment is, I think, the part that is a little concerning. But to that end, also, what kind of policy levers, could you could see Kudlow perhaps advising Trump to pursue at these moments, Sean?
Yeah, so and that is the crux of the matter right now. Tuesday was an amazing day in that the Fed came out with this emergency rate cut. Everyone had been clamoring for this. The markets had been expecting this, and it landed like a damn squib, right? I mean, it's by the end of the day, the markets are down again. The yield on 10-year Treasuries is down below 1% for the
Record
first
low,
time.
yeah.
I mean, it's clear that monetary policy is not the fix here, and so everyone's turning back to the government and to fiscal policy, and they're looking for some kind of targeted economic package. Well, Larry Kudlow, right now, and certainly as of a day ago, was arguing against that very idea. He says the economy is strong enough. Any short-term fixes don't work. Things like a payroll tax cut, that's not going to work. And he's just kind of arguing for battening down the hatches. That is a huge bet in an election year for a president who is staking his reelection bid on a strong economy.
Right.
If this leads to a recession here, if the part of the reason for that is an administration that won't intervene, that won't roll out some kind of big economic rescue package to help airlines and so on, that is going to be potentially a huge step.
All right, Sean, only a minute left here, less than. Tell us about the relationship between Kudlow and his boss, the president.
Yeah, so there's a huge amount of affection there. Kudlow says, Trump is a peer. Obviously, he respects him, the man in the office. But these guys go back a long time. They're roughly the same age. Kudlow is 72. The president is 73, and they are both, in some ways, creatures of kind of 1980s Manhattan who have gone out into the world. Trump also looks to Kudlow and his kind of telegenic style as a hugely important communications tool for the administration. He's talked about in awe of Kudlow's ability to talk up the market as he sees it. So that's, they are incredibly close. They talk a lot. But Kudlow is also an important tool for the president.
It's amazing. It's a great story. It's the cover in this week's edition of Bloomberg This Week. Sean Donnan, senior trade reporter for Bloomberg. He wrote it. He is in Washington. Joel Weber, the editor of the magazine, here with us.
An owner of an amazing crystal ball.
Yeah,
Can I just say that? Because the timing is impeccable.
He saw it.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
All right, Stan, will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, and try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Oh.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
You could find a $5, a $10, a $20, or even a crisp $50 inside The Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash! Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in The Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
The financial capital of the world. 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We move into the final hour of trading where it always gets tricky. We have got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all lower right now, close to the worst level of the day. A 107-point drop right now in the S&P at 3,022. That's a decline of 3.5%. The Dow is down 978 points, a drop there of 3.6%. NASDAQ down 273 points. That is a drop of 3.05%, just under 60 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell. Stocks are tumbling as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to grip financial markets. As for the global economy and coronavirus, Jean-Claude Trichet is the chairman of Trilateral Commission. He's also a former president of the European Central Bank.
Unfortunately, we see now, taking into account globalization, the supply chain at a global level, and all the consequences of the fear that is accompanying this epidemic or this pandemic, we see that there is a demand shock also, and we have both together at the global level.
Right now we've got the 10-year yielding 0.92%. JP Morgan Chase strategists who have been telling clients to trim risky bets in the past couple of months say investors should buy the dip in equities because government and central bank policies will counter the economic blow of the spreading coronavirus. Wells Fargo is limiting employee air travel in the U.S. as companies across the country implement escalated safety measures amid the spread of the coronavirus. Wells Fargo shares today, they are trading lower along with the rest of the banks. Wells Fargo down now by 6.2%. Among some of those airline names, UAL, parent of United, down 9.7%. American Airlines Group down 11.2%. Delta slumping now by 6.6%. Gold up 2.1%, $16.71 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude lower now by 2.1%, $45.79 a barrel. So again, recapping here, 1,024-point drop right now in the Dow. S&P down by 3.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm just going to say it. I really want to talk about Chrissy Teigen and Girl Scout cookies, but we got much more serious stuff to talk about.
Is she buying a lot of?
She did a ranking. Apparently, she did a ranking of the cookies, and it's pretty harsh. But we'll talk about it later.
We'll talk about that later.
We got to talk about economics.
Yeah, let's talk about economics. Let's talk about the
bond
market, especially, and what we may expect from some economic data, some big economic data we're getting tomorrow. To talk about all that, Carl Riccadonna is here, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, and Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg. Alex, we got to start with the 10-year, I think, right? I mean, whoa.
It just keeps going. How about the 30-year? We're getting close to 1.5%.
We're just talking about mortgage rates.
Yeah, I know. There's one of our editors is up from, one of the editors from the Eco team is up from DC, and he's sitting next to me today and goes, is it time for me to refi?
Yeah.
And I mean, what's interesting is that there's actually been a little bit of dislocation in the funding markets, in the repo market, and some of that is residual because you have institutions like the home loan banks that are pulling cash out of that market in anticipation for a refi wave. So, there are knock-on effects here, and all these markets are getting affected in very different ways, but no one is immune from anything going on as it relates to the coronavirus and market behavior and investment behavior here.
Are we seeing a tightening of the financial conditions, Carl?
I think absolutely we're seeing that. You see a widening of credit spreads. Certainly, if we look at the risk-free yield curve, obviously there's some easing happening there, but there's significant wealth effects that spill out of other financial markets, risk markets like equities, for instance.
So talk to us about the economic news, and I think we're most focused. I mean, we got a batch today, but we're all one day before the monthly jobs report, and I do wonder economic fundamentals. What are we starting to see come undone? Or is it just too soon yet in terms of the data points?
Well, it's a little too soon. We can definitely call this the stalest, least important jobs report in recent memory. And
so we're going to cast it asunder?
I think we can almost entirely cast it asunder.
Wow.
Cast it aside. It's valuable in
I may have read a romance novel last night. No, I didn't. I swear I didn't.
It's valuable in one respect. So if it's a weak report, then that really is just going to add into this narrative that we're in trouble. But it does provide a last snapshot of how the economy looked before things started to go bad, and that's a very useful input into economic models. So were we growing at 1.5% in the first quarter before things fell apart, or were we growing at 2.5%? Right, that matters.
Right, a better foundation, stronger foundation.
Normally we'd call it the liftoff point, but it's more of the drop-off point at this this stage of the game. But nonetheless, the preconditions will be very relevant.
I don't like to be alarmist, I really don't, but I do feel like seeing yields and seeing some of the measures that are being taken by central banks around the world, it does, I know this isn't a financial crisis, but it does feel a little bit like that, and I just wonder if you guys agree or disagree.
Someone, I think, had called it like a financial crisis, but for people.
Interesting.
I forget where I was reading it, but it's some of that where now it's like you're getting like a real human effect, in a way, and the financial crisis had spread, but this is directly affecting people, and it's affecting the flow of goods and services. But one thing about financial conditions, today we're seeing this expansion in LIBOR OIS, which tends to be a measurement of like credit stress. And
we talked about it a lot during the financial crisis.
Yeah, and so the last few days it's been more a reflection of catching up to Fed rate expectations and what's going on with cuts. And now, I'm hearing from people today that it's starting to reflect more credit concerns, dynamics in the commercial paper market and the CD market, and people really being judicious about what kind of tenors and what kind of names in the financial space that they're willing to pick up.
And that is not a financial crisis. Financial markets are operating. They may not be doing what you want them to do, but they are operating in a smooth and liquid fashion.
Right.
The Fed is watching this closely and is ready to step in. So there's a lot of volatility. It's not functioning particularly well because these massive swings in equities, right, are debilitating to investors. Nonetheless, markets are clearing. So we can't call it a financial crisis. We can call it a healthcare crisis, and we can also call it an economic crisis because we're getting to the point where the economy is coming very dangerously close to stall speed. So my team is looking for growth. Originally we talk about the preconditions.
Correct.
We were about 2% growth for the first half of this year. We downgraded that from the stock market, let alone whatever the containment and social distancing and quarantine measures. That's going to take an even more severe toll on the economy. Now, the good news is, earlier in the cycle, we saw slowdowns of this magnitude when the unemployment rate was higher, and the economy managed to pull out of it, right? But keep downgrading forecasts. Eventually, you get to the point where we've hit stall speed, and the economy could slip into recession. So, by no means making a recession call here, but we're getting closer to that stall speed.
We also have to look at the bigger picture, which is, and Ambrose Evans Pritchard on the Telegraph had a column about this today. which is the efficacy of the ammunition that the central banks have.
Right.
And that's the thing is,
you brought that up earlier.
And thinking about what can the central banks do, particularly what can the Fed do, because the ECB really doesn't have much of anything. The BOJ doesn't have much of anything.
Well, the Fed doesn't have a whole lot.
No, and that was the point that he was making. So what do? Is QE going to have the same efficacy with a 30-year yield at 1.5% as it did when rates were higher in 2008? And these are the things that people are now thinking about. And one of the things that when we step back, everyone's saying it's like, rate cuts, they can cure coronavirus. And people are being a little tongue-in-cheek about it, but it is a big problem.
I just want to mention New York City's Mayor de Blasio calling on some New Yorkers to self-isolate themselves. So in terms of the virus.
Rate cuts help. QE helps to some degree, but Alex is completely right. There's no reason whatsoever to think that you get the same bang for the buck out of QE now as we did 10 years ago during the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So one thing the Fed should do, the Fed should come out and say, here's what we won't do. Because negative rates in Europe have been a huge policy mistake with disastrous consequences for the banks. The Fed should say we're getting close to zero on the bound here, on wherever you want to look on the yield curve. We will not go into negative territory, period.
Well,
and that will be a sigh of relief for a vast swath of the financial markets.
Except the President of the United States, because he disagrees with you. But that's for another day.
He's not setting those rates.
That's right. Thank you so much, Chief U.S. Economist for Bloomberg Economics, Alex Harris, bond reporter for Bloomberg, both here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio.
And it's only Thursday, Lemon.
It's only Thursday, Lemon. All right. Much more to come here on a Thursday edition of Bloomberg Business Week.
See,
First,
you don't even
Bob
know. You're
Moon.
like, what day is it?
He's got world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Jason, more cruise ship passengers are at the mercy of the Coast Guard and public health authorities as their Princess Cruise Line's vessel is ordered held out in the Pacific off San Francisco until testing can be carried out on passengers exhibiting flu-like symptoms. The acting Deputy Homeland Security Secretary spoke at a Senate hearing earlier this afternoon and says officials learned a lot of negative lessons from how the Diamond Princess cruise ship was previously quarantined in Japan. Ken Cuccinelli.
Let's be clear about what we learned. That was a bad quarantine. That was not a successful quarantine situation, and not just because the virus spread. That was a secondary effect of a bad quarantine.
Coast Guard paramedic jumpers are set to deliver testing kits by helicopter to the ship later today. $8.3 billion in emergency coronavirus funding is headed to the White House for President Trump's signature. But in a state that's already seen its known coronavirus cases shoot up to 22 in a matter of days, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo says the total that he's hearing the state will be allocated isn't realistic.
The vice president said, don't worry, I'll make sure the states get the funds they need, because he was a former governor. And New York State gets $35 million. We, on our own, allocated $40 million, and they have an $8 billion supplemental, and New York State gets $35 million.
More than $2 billion would go to help federal, state, and local governments prepare for and respond to the threat. And Elizabeth Warren is out of the Democratic presidential race. I'm Bob Moon.
Europe, stability, and constant evolution. Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
Your job is going to be even more important, I'd argue.
Experience with consistent information.
Would it be a policy mistake if global central banks signaled a more dovish stance?
Bloomberg Daybreak Europe.
So how do you tackle that? What's your mechanism?
Weekdays at 1 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
When you went car shopping, you meant business. You aced vehicle history searches and test drives. You out-salesmaned the salesman. Now you've got your wheels. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll have the info you need to get more for your future. Go to aceyourretirement.org, because when it comes to speeding past financial challenges, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived in Philadelphia. Local time is 3:05 p.m. and the temperature is 67 degrees. At this time, you are now free to use your cellular devices.
You know that feeling when you get to turn your phone on after the plane lands? You can have that feeling every time you drive. Make sure your cell phone is stowed away whenever you are behind the wheel.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now, there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. If morning is not your favorite part of the day, then maybe you're not listening.
We finally start to make a move.
Tom Keene.
What would you expect from Bezos next?
Jonathan Farrell.
How uncomfortable should central banks be with this situation?
Morning should be good for you.
We had no idea where this would head on that morning after.
Bloomberg Surveillance. Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern. On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter.
Delayed at the dentist and now you're late for school pickup. You need a free now. Need to take the dog to the vet before lunch. Should have gotten a free now. Trying to get 4 kids and their baggage to the airport. Free now. Sometimes you can't get from A to B fast enough. Download the Free Now app today for quick pickups and reliable drivers, no matter the situation. Less hassle, more hustle with Free Now.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Welcome to Cathay Island. We hope you've enjoyed flying Cathay Airways. Oh, and Cathay, congratulations on the Euro Millions win.
This Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £26 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End, and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Movies like Contagion and Outbreak, not to mention all the cell phone images from disease-stricken countries, have made Americans pandemic voyeurs.
Now, for the first time, we're facing the probability that we will not just be witnessing, we'll be experiencing. And then we'll find out, what is the mettle of Americans?
Catch this week's On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Another move lower for the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ. Past couple of minutes, just looking at a 4% drop right now in the S&P 500 index, down 125 points, but with a whole lot more on today's trading. Let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is, Bill Maloney.
And good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks trading at session lows here. Dow's currently down 1,100 points. Like you said, S&Ps are down 4%, and the NASDAQ declines by 3.6%. The U.S. 10-year yield is at 0.91%. Small caps fall 40 points, and all of the main 11 SB sectors are trading lower, led by 5% declines in the industrials and financials. Transports sink 500 points. Semis drop 3.5%, and the VIX is trading higher by 31%. Leaders to the downside in the Dow, UTX, Boeing, and Exxon Mobil. And regarding earnings today, Kroger was a bright spot, rising 7.6%. In other news, travel-related names continued their plunge. Royal Caribbean dropped 16%. Norwegian Cruise and Carnival each fell 13%. Wrapping things up, Costco reports after the bell. Live from the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
Okay, I thank you very much, Bill. You're listening to Market History. Got to stay with Bloomberg right through the close to see how things shake out and, of course, how Asian markets perform tonight. And to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg, type SQUAWK, SQUAWK on your terminal. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
American Idol guys?
No, but sort of in that realm.
I know who this is, and I know who this is.
Yes, you do.
Wait.
Oh, you said it. You said it. It slipped out.
Is it Creed?
Yes, indeed.
Creed. Okay.
All right.
Sorry, Reg.
There you go.
I got a little assist from Reggie Bazile.
Way to go, Reg.
Directing our show.
Right, well
our technical
done.
director. I just didn't hear it completely. Thanks,
Creed? Like Creed?
Creed.
All right, so what do you got
Can
for
you
us?
take me higher?
Great. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I can take you higher when it comes to yields. I mean, that's really the story at this point. And it's kind of hard to find much in the Treasury market when you have a 10-year yield below 1%. So, if you go to the stock market, what do you find? What I did was this little exercise where I looked at the companies in the S&P 500 based on what are called indicated dividend yields. So basically take their current payout rates, go out 4 quarters. What would shareholders end up with as a percentage of the stock price? So I took that and compared it with the Bloomberg Barclays U.S. Corporate High Yield Index, the yield on that indicator, which is a benchmark for bonds that don't have investment grade ratings. And when you run the numbers on a quarterly basis, which is what I did, you go back to the end of 2018, only 2 companies in the S&P 500 had dividend yields that were higher than this high yield bond index. That number has been going up every quarter since then. And as of Tuesday, it was 22. It just goes to show you how things are changing as yields move around. We know that the high yield debt has been coming down with the rest of the market in terms of the yield that the securities offer. And at the same time, with what we've been seeing in stocks lately, at least, you've seen the dividend yields go up. So when you put the two together, it's gotten easier to find companies that would be relatively lucrative if you were a bond investor, I suppose.
Well, speaking of being a bond investor, investors pulling $12 billion from U.S. corporate bond and loan funds. So we continue to see investors moving money around, pulling money out of the market.
Yeah, presumably the investors are going to cash, right?
I would assume so.
I mean, if you're pulling out of corporate and U.S. bond funds, it's not like you're throwing them into equities, I'm guessing, right?
Right. I mean, where would you go? You could go gold
Yeah, exactly. The money market, whatever.
Yeah.
It's funny because I did the same analysis today, just now, that I did yesterday to put together this chart, the number is now up to 31.
Wow.
It just goes to show you what one down day for stocks will do, I suppose. Now,
doesn't mean that they don't come with their own risk.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you're getting those high yields because it's a risk-reward kind of.
Yeah, and there's nothing guaranteed about a dividend like an interest payment on a bond. So you may be looking at, a batch of companies, some of which at least will have to cut their payouts down the line. And that would, effectively bring down the yield. So whenever you get a list like this, it's the sort of analysis you have to do. You look at what's on top of the list, at least what was as of Tuesday. Let's see if it's still there today. Yes, it is. Macy's.
Yeah.
They certainly have their issues. Occidental Petroleum follows after that. And, of course, they made the big deal for Anadarko last year, so they took on a bunch of debt. Not a great time, given what's happened to oil prices. And I'll tell you something. For email subscribers, this is a bonus offer, folks.
Oh, wow.
I sent out today to all my email subscribers, not just my usual chart and explanation, but the entire list of the 22 stocks. And so if you sign up for my list now, you get that as well. And everything I do going forward. How do you beat that offer?
I feel like a little Ronco, offering a Ronco peel.
Exactly.
Order now and you get that.
Keep this guy away from Jim Baker.
Thing or whatever.
This is a one-time deal, I should point out.
Wow.
In any case, if you're interested, send me an email. I'll get it to you. The address is dwilson@bloomberg.net. That's dwilson@bloomberg.net.
Before you leave, just give us your thoughts right now on the markets. I know you've been bouncing around between TV and radio here, but we're pretty much at our lows of the day. I mean, again, it's a pretty steep sell-off today.
Yeah, and when you look especially at the travel-related shares, I mean, you get a sell-off like we had in the group, and at some point people just throw in the towel and walk away. It sure looks like that's happening when you consider there are 11 stocks in the S&P 500 right now that are down more than 10%, and 7 of them fit the bill. We're talking about the cruise lines, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Norwegian airlines. You've got American, Alaska Air, and United. And then you throw in MGM Resorts on top of that. Think casinos. Yeah. So it really does look like things are kind of washing out today. Now, whether that holds for any length of time may be another story. But, at some point there is that word capitulation that comes into play. And you have to think, at least with this group of stocks, if not necessarily the broader market, that's what's going on.
We're now down about 7% on the S&P 500 for the year overall. And we still got another trading day.
Yeah.
Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Dave's going to come back a little bit later on with his stock of the day. Coming up, it's a favorite guest of ours. We've got a couple of our favorite guests, I feel like, today.
Yeah, totally.
Stefan Seelig is going to be with us. We're going to talk about the markets. He has insight from having worked within the administration on commerce and trade, but now he's doing deals, and we'll see what he has to say about this current environment. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Stocks remain in the grip of coronavirus fears, still sharply lower in the final hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 1,030, the S&P 500 down 114, the S&P 500 down 289. It's a great time to get a mortgage. Rates for 30-year fixed-rate loans fell this week to an average of 3.29%, according to Freddie Mac. That's a record low. Analysts say rates could go lower, but are unlikely to fall below 3%. Unemployment line shrank last week, a sign that the job market remains healthy despite the coronavirus. The government says first-time claims for jobless benefits fell by 3,000 to 216,000. That was in line with forecasts. Movie theater and restaurant stocks are selling off after producers postponed the release of the latest James Bond movie. AMC Entertainment is down 13%, Cinemark is down 4%, Darden Restaurants is down 7%. Larry Kofsky, Bloomberg Radio.
If you love them enough to listen to them practice the same song on tuba,
please be done.
Over and over and over and over and over, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Sounds good, honey.
Check today at nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Delayed at the dentist and now you're late for school pickup. You need a free now. Need to take the dog to the vet before lunch. Should have gotten a free now. Trying to get 4 kids and their baggage to the airport. Free now. Sometimes you can't get from A to B fast enough. Download the Free Now app today for quick pickups and reliable drivers, no matter the situation. Less hassle, more hustle with Free Now.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. There's something for everyone. Carpet Right. For life.
Matt Letizia, what did you make of that performance today?
Well, it really was a game of two halves, to be honest, Jeff. Leicester came out in the first half really...
Letiz?
What's up, Jeff?
Run for it!
What the...
Move over, football. Cheltenham coming through. And Sky Bet are on the charge. With money back as actual cash, up to £10 if you lose on the first race of the festival. Sky Bet. That's betting better. Applies to first bet on first race at Cheltenham on losing singles and win part of each way singles only. Money back as cash, free bet stakes excluded, eligibility restrictions, T's and C's apply. 18 plus, begambleaware.org.
It was a Sunday morning when I jumped on the tube.
And decided to pop down to Greenwich via
a large indoor jungle.
And when I got there, I was captivated by a sparkling
scary dinosaur just standing there right in front of me.
So off we went to Wembley Park
to look at the colourful fish.
Tap into the wonderful world of Off-Peak London. Travel in zones 2 to 6 for £1.50. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
£1.50 is an adult off-peak pay-as-you-go fare for a journey not going via Zone 1 on Tube, DLR and most London Overground services. Always touch in and out with the same card or device to pay the right fare.
Fill the trolley with your favourite brands on rollback at Asda. A 38-pack of Fairy Non-Bio capsules was £8.50, now £5.75. A Lenore Gold fabric conditioner was £4, now £2.50. Big brands, small prices. Don't compromise. Asda. Save money, live better. Selected stores subject to availability. Lenore 1.925 litres. Ends 18th of March.
Shh. Whisper it. This LG Turbo Wash with AI Direct Drive will soon be your strong, silent hero. One of the UK's quietest and quickest washing machines, it uses a jet spray to cut your washing time to under an hour. More convenience, less hassle. And with all LG appliances, you can save up to £100 when you trade in your old one. Heroes of the home at Curry's PC World. Full terms at currys.co.uk.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Casting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
All right, coming into our studio, Stefan Seelig. Coming up, we're going to talk to him. It's going to be a fun conversation. We've been getting going already. Can't wait to share with you some of his thoughts on what to make of this, maybe from a slightly longer term perspective, this being, of course, the coronavirus.
Right, we're going to talk, and he being Stefan Seelig of Bridgepark Advisors. We'll get to him in just a moment. Let's get back, though, to your top business stories and a look at that trading day just coming off the lows here, Charlie.
Indeed. lead, but still a more than 1,000-point drop for the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We've got 28 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell, with the Dow down 3.8%. S&P 500 index down 117 points. That is a drop of 3.7%. NASDAQ down 306 points right now, a drop of 3.4%. 10-year yield 0.92%. Stay with Bloomberg Radio right through the close to see where things wind up. And of course, we will continue with our coverage of Asian markets tonight right here on Bloomberg Radio. Again, we've got gold pushing higher, up 2.1%, $16.71 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude lower now by 2.1%, $45.80 a barrel. S&P 500 index down 4%, erasing nearly all of yesterday's steep gains as wild swings pile up. Michael Shaul is the chairman and CEO of Marketfield Asset Management.
Once things get to this point, it normally takes a few weeks in order for things to settle down. I mean, whether it was LTCM or the Euro crisis or any one of these events, all we know now is that we don't really understand what's going to happen next. And it's probably 4, 6, 8 weeks before we're going to have any useful information as to what the trajectory of the virus is or what the actual economic fallout looks like.
And Google analyst says Google's massive travel advertising business could be hurt because the coronavirus outbreak is disrupting travel plans. Needham analyst Laura Martin estimates spending on travel search ads will drop $1 billion in the first quarter and $3 billion in the second quarter. Shares of Alphabet, parent of Google, they're down today by 5.2%. Again, recapping, U.S. stocks, they are lower across the board. One stock that is up today, shares of Clorox. So they're advancing by 0.5%. Again, recapping, S&P down 112 points, a drop of 3.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
I'm driving in my car. I turn on the radio.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive. Just drive, baby.
It's the question that drives us.
This is the Drive to the Close.
That funky music will drive us till the dawn.
On Bloomberg Radio.
All right, so just about 26 minutes away from that closing bell. And as Charlie just mentioned, equities are down more than 3% on each of those major equity averages. Just a little bit of a turn to the upside, but still down across the board. Now, as we mentioned earlier, our theme today and really all this week has been about the coronavirus's impact on the world and increasingly on our developed world, like here in the United States. So here was some thoughts on what it all means and the market volatility more broadly is Stefan Seelig. He's back with us, managing partner at Bridge Park Advisors, former Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade at the U.S. Department of Commerce during the Obama administration, back in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Nice to have you back with us.
Thanks, Carol. Good to be here.
I love having you here. Jason and I both do, because I really do feel like we take a step back and kind of calmly look at what are the implications of things going on in our world. So what are the implications of the increased market volatility, concerns surrounding the virus? How do you see it?
Well, look, I think we are living in a highly uncertain world that is going to continue to be quite fluid. And so any guest you have that comes on that really thinks they have some clairvoyant crystal ball that is going to tell you how this is going to play out, I think is being somewhat disingenuous, because frankly, we have not seen an analogy to something like this for the last century. And obviously a century ago, when we had the last global pandemic, the world was far less interconnected. And so, we have to wait to see how this plays out. The question that I'm hearing from boards of directors is this going to lead to a U.S. recession? One, if so, how broad and deep will it be, and what is the recovery likely to be like coming out of it if we were to get there?
What do you say to that?
Well, what I'm saying for sure is there's going to be economic disruption. The severity of that is going to be unclear, at least at the moment, after I've just said anybody that guesses is playing a parlor game, is that we are not going to go, the U.S. will not go into a recession, and that's for a number of reasons. One is our labor market remains extraordinarily strong. Obviously, unemployment is at 50-year lows. The housing market is quite solid, and consumer confidence, which makes up 70% of our economy, still remains quite high. And until we see actually companies starting to lay off or furlough employees or the consumer stopping to spend money, I am not particularly worried about a recession, and the implications are going to be much more industry specific. So generalizing about the overall economy is going to be tough, for sure, in leisure and lodging and transportation and retail and certain other industries. This could be, tough sledding for a while.
And so when you're in those boardrooms, often you're talking about potential deals and mergers and acquisitions, all sorts of things. What's the appetite for that? Has it changed given this backdrop?
Well, this is all kind of new, obviously, playing out over the last couple of weeks. And I'm actually somewhat surprised that we've seen a number of big deals announced over the course of the last couple of weeks. You saw Gilead do a big deal. You saw a big medical devices company, Thermo Electron, did a big deal. Morgan Stanley did a big deal. ThyssenKrupp sold a $19 billion elevator business. So M&A activity is continuing. That being said, those deals have been percolating for some period of time. What we've seen in the past is in these sorts of periods of extreme volatility that deal making has been put on hold because pricing assets is very, very difficult. And in addition, not just is pricing assets difficult because of the volatility in markets, in this particular case, the answer to those other questions about what is the long-term implication of this activity going to be. So how do you think about what your supply chain should be? How do you think about what your customer base is going to be? Is it going to be as global as you would have expected? And that might be different than the world in which all of us were operating under a year or two ago.
We've only got about 40 seconds, then we're going to come back and talk some more with you. But that could be the big implication, right? I mean, we've already had people questioning their global supply chains coming off the U.S.-China trade war, right? And the trade wars that we've seen certainly happen in the last year or so. But this could be something that just makes everybody rethink it even more. Just got about 30 seconds.
That is, Carol, the synaptic connection, which is, are people going to say, aha, I told you so. So trading with China is bad for national security because they steal our stuff. It's bad for our economy because they take our jobs and is decimating our manufacturing sector. And if that weren't bad enough, it also makes our population sick. And so as a result of that, is this going to become part of that overall narrative that collapses globalization? And if that is the case, and we really do accelerate this move to a bipolar world, global growth will for sure be impacted.
All right. Stick around with us. Stefan Seelig, Managing Partner of Bridge Park Advisors, former Undersecretary of Commerce, longtime advisor to big companies across the world. Let's get to the world and national headlines with Bob Moon. Hey, Bob.
Jason, thank you very much. Elizabeth Warren bowed out of the Democratic presidential race today, acknowledging it's become a two-way battle between former Vice President Joe Biden and U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders. The senator made the announcement outside her home in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and also said she is not upset about placing third in her state on Super Tuesday. Still, she's disappointed that a woman will still not be elected president.
I know. One of the hardest parts of this is all those baby promises and all those little girls who are going to have to wait 4 more years. That's going to be hard.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi spent much of her weekly press conference today talking about her wish not to be the most powerful woman in Washington, but to see a woman elected president. The Trump administration seems willing to cut Taliban leaders some slack despite continuing attacks by the Afghan rebels in the face of an agreement signed last week to end the violence. Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports from Washington.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo at a news conference called the upsurge in violence unacceptable, but
we have seen the senior Taliban leadership working diligently to reduce violence. But what we have urged all the parties to do is stop posturing. It's time to move forward. It's time to reduce violence. It's time to sit down and talk.
Pompeo called on the Afghan government to accept the commitment to exchange prisoners that was part of the U.S. Taliban deal. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news, 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Bob Moon.
business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
TuneIn's your destination for college basketball, and it's free.
Down the right side of the lane, jumper up and go.
This week, we have a must-hear game, North Carolina at Duke.
2 for the win. No, tapped up by Moore. And it is the buzzer. Moore bakes it in.
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Kimball right of the lane against the SU zone to Warren.
With college basketball on TuneIn, you can hear every call from games around the country live. Search college sports to listen free today. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got 13 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell here with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. A 118-point drop right now for the S&P 500 index, lower by 3.7%. The Dow is down 1,045 points. That is a drop of 3.8%. NASDAQ Composite Index also lower. NASDAQ slumping now by 302 points. For NASDAQ, that is a drop right now of 3.4%. 10-year yield 0.91%. Crude oil down 2% now. West Texas Intermediate 45.82 a barrel. Brent below 50, 49.88. A drop there of 2.4%. So again, recapping here, stocks moving lower, stocks declining as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus continues to grip financial markets. Stay with Bloomberg for the very latest. You got to stay with us right through the close to see how things wind up. And of course, our Asian market coverage continues tonight. S&P down 116 now, a drop there of 3.7%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Stefan Seelig still here with us, managing partner, Bridge Park Advisors, former Undersecretary of Commerce for International Trade at the U.S. Department of Commerce, longtime advisor on Wall Street as well. And, Stefan, we sort of started getting into this in the last segment, this notion of it really fundamentally changing trade in some ways. You know this world very well. We're coming off of a year where we spent a lot of time talking to you about the complicated relationship between the U.S. and China. Play this out for us. What does a new world order look like if what you were saying before takes hold and nationalism starts to be the song of the day?
Look, Jason, I think I'm probably older than you, but in our freshman economics class, we learned about Adam Smith, and it talked about essentially the economic benefit of connectivity and trade. When you trade, both parties are better off. We're now hearing this mantra, both on the far right and the far left, about the costs of connectivity, whether those costs are going to be the decimation of the manufacturing sector in the U.S., the loss of high-paying jobs, the loss of security. Now you are also going to add to that mix the health implications of global connectivity. And so my fear would be that this is now purported to be further evidence of a narrative that is going to be bad for our economy and bad for the global economy and bad for global prosperity. So we can't forget how many people were brought out of poverty over the course of the last 50 years around the world because of globalization, and the fact that we've lived in a time where there have been no major world power conflicts over that period of time. And one could argue that was because of the power and benefits of connectivity. And to the extent we become more insular as a result of this, and that trend is further given credibility, I think it's going to be a bad thing for our country and it's going to be a bad thing for the world.
All right. So, I mean, what changes that thinking, right? Because for such a long time, Stefan, we were all in on globalization. We understood the benefits and everybody was okay with it. And then, just take a look at the various, global political elections over the last few years. And as Jason said, nationalism becoming the song of the day, there was such an extreme pushback. A lot of it had to do with, income gaps, wealth gaps, and so on and so forth. So how do we is it a case of decreasing those gaps that everybody starts to say, okay, we're all benefiting by globalization again?
Carol, I think it begins and ends with leadership. And the fact is around the world, people in the polity has come to the view that our global leaders, our political leaders have failed us. And that our systems, both our economic system and our political system, has not led to fairness, equality, and prosperity. And that, to me, we're seeing that play out in our elections. We've seen it play out in Mexico, in Brazil, in Argentina, in Ireland, in the EU. And that, to me, is where this is all going to come down to, which is how do we restore confidence in political leadership around the world, that they have a system in place that is going to increase security and prosperity for the populations that they represent.
But why don't they do it? I feel like we have been talking about, this is an issue, right? These income gaps we've been talking about. We've seen the numbers. Why don't we do it? Why don't the leaders do it?
Well, boy, that's a complicated question. I guess you should ask your boss, who's got a strong view on this topic. Sure. But I think it's a lot of things. People tend to be short-sighted, and politics definitionally is short-sighted because everybody is coming up for their next election, and as a result, hasn't made the sorts of investments in infrastructure and other things that would have served their communities and their populations well. Two is we lost track of this notion that while connectivity is great for the economy overall, it is bad for specific elements of our population in our respective countries. So when everybody buys a TV or a T-shirt or a suit and pays less, that's great and it leads to economic growth. But when those jobs are lost and those communities are impacted because factories close and all the businesses that support those people close, that has a very profound impact. And we have not figured out in the United States or in the West what to do to actually drive overall economic growth, but on the one hand, but at the other hand, support those folks that have had the negative consequences of that very growth.
And so are there implications for the U.S. presidential election, do you think, and the elections that we're going to have later this year, even down ballot?
Sure. Jason, they're myriad, right? I mean, I think for the president, to the extent that this really devolves into a deeper economic disruption, for sure that's going to make it more challenging for him to get reelected. And I think it plays into this Senator Sanders narrative about our system is broken and probably is not particularly helpful to Vice President Biden, who really does look back to or try to point us back to an era where we had more stability. I think what you're hearing from people around the world is the systems that existed or exist today are somehow flawed and broken, and people are looking for changes to those various systems to improve their lives.
Right, and I don't know whether it's a case of change happens. So, in fact, we talk about disruption. I hate using that word because it's overused, but, a lot of industries did get disrupted, and we didn't think about the people impacted, and they've been impacted for a while, and we haven't figured out a way to kind of bring them back into the system. I do want to ask you, since you've been in an administration, we talked with Chris Liu, who also worked under the Obama administration, having been in the room when things are happening, the handling of the virus. And, I hate to point fingers, but I do wonder, did we miss something here in the United States in terms of being prepared?
Look, in the administration I was a part of, when they identified global risks to our population, our security, pandemics was always on President Obama's list. Period. Fortunately,
H1N1, I believe, happened during that administration,
and Ebola as well.
Yeah.
Right. And by the way, this is just one example of that. This is going to likely to be a continuing phenomenon for world populations, especially as we remain interconnected for some period of time, regardless of what those trends look like. And I would say that again, not to cast aspersions, that the specific person who looked after pandemics in the National Security Council, that function was removed by the administration in 2018. That has to be a mistake. Our government has to have the protection of its population from pandemics as a priority, and we're seeing the ramifications about this. I'm not a physician, but the speed of response to pandemics is so critical to containing it. And no matter what the Fed does, the Fed ain't coming up with a vaccine. Right. The Fed ain't coming up with slowing down the transmission of this disease. That really is a medical and a policy strategy that cannot be solved economically.
Well, and from working inside it, I mean, the government, the administration is one thing, the government is a whole other thing, right? And being able to sort of command and control the government and run the bureaucracy, it's become a dirty word, but it has a function.
And I will say it's interesting to compare and contrast the Chinese response to the U.S. response. And, the one thing about being in a command economy like that exists in China, they say stay home.
Yeah.
People
stay home.
People stay home.
That was locked down.
And be interesting to see, if and when this spreads in the United States, the sort of behavior patterns that any administration or government can actually impose.
All right, Stefan, always love having you here. Stefan Seelig, Managing Partner at Bridgepark Advisors. Stay safe. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. We've got just a few minutes left in the trading day, folks, and we have equities pretty much hovering at their worst levels of the session. You are listening and watching Bloomberg.
The starting gun for your weekday race. Karen Moscow.
Airlines could soon be under pressure.
Nathan Hager.
Apple has reversed course.
Bloomberg Daybreak, beginning at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Super luxury standard setter Amman Resorts is spinning off a...
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
Welcome to Cathay Island. We hope you've enjoyed flying Cathay Airways. Oh, and Cathay, congratulations on the Euro Millions win.
This Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £26 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Volatility back big time to the downside. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ, all lower. Folks from Gender Equality Global Partnership ringing that closing bell. This update brought to you by Witham, a forward-thinking, technology-driven advisory and accounting firm helping clients be in a position of strength in today's modern business landscape. Visit witham.com to learn more. S&P 500 index sinks 3.4%, notches its fourth straight swing of at least 2.8%. Stocks tumbling today as volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to grip financial markets. Treasury yields sinking to record lows. Haven assets surge. Today we've got the 10-year at 0.91%. Gold up 2.2%, $16.73 the ounce. What about the equity markets? S&P 500 index continuing to slump down another 106 points, down 3.4%. Dow Industrials down 971, a drop there of 3.6%. Nasdaq down 279 points, a drop of 3.1%. As for the market backdrop, Stefan Selig is managing partner at Bridge Park Advisors. He was our guest moments ago right here on Bloomberg Business Week.
Until we see actually companies starting to lay off or furlough employees or the consumer stopping to spend money, I am not particularly worried about a recession, and the implications are going to be much more industry specific. So generalizing about the overall economy is going to be tough for sure in leisure and lodging and transportation and retail and certain other industries. This could be, tough sledding for a while.
And the head of the FAA saying moments ago that he expects the 737 MAX certification flight to take place, quote, in a few weeks. Boeing shares lower today. Boeing slumping on airline industry woes. Boeing down today by 8%. Recapping, stocks lower. S&P down by 106 points, a drop of 3.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Your next move will be your last.
Nobody move a muscle.
Damn, Stiffy, you got to move.
And I'm moving from town to town.
Time is money. Let's go. Come on, move it.
Shake it up. Shake it up.
Bloomberg Business Week, Movers and Shakers, with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed. Time to take a look at some of the stocks on the move. Let's not forget, we do anticipate Costco reporting their latest results after the closing bell. So I think that's about 4:15. So as soon as they cross, we will bring them to you. Big picture, most names in the S&P 500, 484 to be exact, lower in today's trading session, 21 higher. Kroger was one of those names. I think Dave or maybe Charlie was mentioning it earlier. Kroger, in fact, your number one gainer in the S&P 500. Check it out. Pretty much finishing near its highs of the session, up 8.1% at the close, $33.47 a share, and that has to do with its latest earnings report. And that company came out with an upbeat report, and that certainly, we're talking about fourth quarter adjusted EPS, that did beat estimates. We did see that fourth quarter adjusted EPS 57 versus 48 year over year. The estimate was 55, so 2 pennies better than what Wall Street was forecasting. Earnings was a beat, so were revenues just slightly a little bit better than forecast. So nonetheless, that was for the fourth quarter, Kroger. And again, number one gainer in the S&P, 8.1% in what was a market where almost everything sold off.
Right. And so on the other side of the ledger, I mean, travel and tourism, you heard that quote from Stefan Selig that Charlie just played. I mean, that is an area that is really just getting beat up, to say the least. Totally. I mean, it's just amazing. And so your two worst performers are cruise lines, Royal Caribbean and Carnival, and then closely followed by American Airlines, and then another cruise line or Norwegian. So those are your top four worst performers in a day, as you say, where to be the worst of the worst really was saying something.
Yeah, totally, right?
I mean, those are all stocks that are down double digits. Royal Caribbean down 17%.
The super composite, the S&P 500 super composite airlines sub-industry index, which is a group of, all of the airlines and related companies, was down 8.5% in today's session. So down more than 25 points. So,
and Delta Airlines specifically down 7%. I mean, that has long been seen, or of late, I should say, really been seen as one of the strongest airline names. And so to see them down that much is notable.
They're now down about 29% for the year. So if you talk about a bear market or, more than a correction, we've certainly seen it for those names. What else are we looking at?
Well, we're waiting for Costco, as I think you mentioned. And, that name is one that we watch all the time, but I'm watching maybe a little more closely now because of everything going on in the world. The stock was down about 1.5% today.
Let's talk about HPQ and Xerox, because that was something we talked about earlier. HPQ ending the day just down about 0.3%. Xerox, let's just check on that name. It was down about 6%. So the reason it's because HP came out and said, thanks, Xerox, but no thanks. We're not interested in doing a deal. So the back and forth continues between these companies. As you know, last week in the magazine, Austin Carr did a story about this and took a look at really kind of a deep dive into what these two companies are about. It's all about the printing business. It's not sexy. It's not high tech, but it still brings in a ton of revenues. And the question is...
A lot of people in the printer business are offended that you just called them unsexy.
I'm really sorry.
Just saying.
The cartridges, little sexy. No, I'm just kidding. But anyway, those two stocks were down. Xerox down the most.
I just led you right into that one.
But I'm bummed.
Yeah.
So we are waiting for Costco. We did see Costco rally in yesterday's session. It was up about 6% in an overall up market. It was down about 1.6% today. But it'll be interesting not only to get their earnings, but we want to see what they're saying about the impact of the virus.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, because listen, people might go to the stores to buy more things, but then you have to think about supplies coming in, and if those start to get disrupted for some of these companies, you can only sell what's on your shelf. So this is going to be, as people have said, a supply side crisis versus a demand crisis, right? If you can't get stuff in and it's not there to sell, that's going to impact you. So Costco is certainly an important one for us to watch. Let's check out the volatility.
Yeah, let's check out volatility. The VIX up about 24%. That is notable. I was looking at the SINS function on the Bloomberg. So this is the highest level. It came down a little bit over the course of the day. So it's not a super high. At one point, it was the highest since 2011, October of 2011. Earlier today, it came back just a little bit, I guess, as stocks rallied just a bit. So it closed there at 39.63.
So just below 40. Wow.
All right, Dave, you're up.
Hi, my name is Dave.
Wilson, where are you? Wilson!
Just what do you think you're doing, Dave?
We're going for the price on Wilson.
Open up the door, it's Dave. Who? Dave.
Hey, Mr. Wilson!
Dave Wilson back with us with his stock of the day. What you got, Dave?
I've got Play AGS, Jason. It's a maker of slot machines and other gaming equipment. The company was founded in 2005 and focused on Native American casinos, especially in Oklahoma, before expanding throughout North America. Its main operating unit goes by the name AGS. Play AGS was taken public in January 2018 by the private equity firm Apollo Global Management, which still has a 23% stake. The ticker is AGS. Play AGS more than doubled in its first 8 months of trading, but the gain lasted for less than a year. The share set a record low on August 8th when they plunged 52% in response to disappointing second quarter results. Now, Play AGS took another tumble today after releasing figures for the fourth quarter. Sales trailed average analyst estimate in a Bloomberg survey for the third time in 4 quarters, though earnings came out ahead. Now, the results sent Play AGS shares to a record low of $6.43. They closed at $6.65, and that works out to a loss of about 19%. And just to put those prices in perspective, Play AGS came public at $16 a share.
Oh, my God. It's down 45% this year now.
Yeah.
That's a tough one.
Right.
All right, Dave Wilson, thank you so much. Our Bloomberg Stocks columnist and editor, Dave Wilson, with his stock of the day. Folks, we're watching our Bloomberg terminals, just waiting for Costco earnings to cross. As soon as those numbers do, we will bring them to you. In the meantime, let's get a check on world and national news headlines. Out to San Francisco we go, and to Ed Baxter. Hi, Ed.
Okay, hi. It's kind of like waiting in line at Costco sometimes, I think.
It's totally like that.
Yeah. U.S. Senate, Carol, has passed the $8.3 coronavirus bill, sending it to the president. San Francisco has 2 confirmed cases of coronavirus now. Mayor London Breed says the 2 patients are unrelated, did not have any history of travel to countries known with coronavirus outbreaks, both being treated at SF hospitals. Health officials in the Trump administration are urging people who are sick to stay home from work. Acting Department of Homeland Security Secretary Ken Cuccinelli is the very latest.
Certain businesses where it's important for everyone else, not just coworkers, for that person to stay home.
Except the president president, who's disputing the World Health Organization's mortality percentages, and he says are going to work sick.
We have thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that get better just by, sitting around and even going to work. Some of them go to work, but they get better.
Donald Trump on Fox. Elizabeth Warren has dropped out of the presidential race.
I will not be running for president in 2020, but I guarantee I will stay in the fight for the hardworking folks across this country who've gotten the short end of the stick.
She says it's a shame. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she thinks Americans, especially men, aren't ready for a female president.
Many of them will tell you they had a strong mom, they have strong sisters, they have strong daughters, but they have their own insecurities.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says there will be consequences if Iran does not straighten out regarding nuclear weapons. Iran says the inspection cases presented are fake and will not let inspections happen. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is Bloomberg Radio.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Can you give us your broad sense of the main driver behind the latest weakness?
They talk with the most interesting people.
When you talk to your clients, are they taking this seriously?
Lisa Abramowitz.
What's going to be the main driver of growth?
Paul Sweeney.
What did you take away from those Amazon numbers last night?
Bloomberg Markets.
Is it as ominous this time around?
Weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
You took the first step and quit smoking, but even former smokers may still be at risk for lung cancer. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know about a new low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early. It takes only 60 seconds and could save your life. You took the first step, now take the next. Visit SaveByTheScan.org for a simple quiz to see if you're eligible and talk to your doctor about screening. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert. Filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester,
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
On average, in London, a scooter or motorbike is stolen every hour. Make sure it's not yours. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
Incredible. This piece is my favourite. Stunning. I can't look away. Who's the artist? It's clearly a Costa. Oh, look. There's the artist now. What do you call this masterpiece?
We call it our velvety smooth flat white.
Crafted with the world's best beans and finished with a floret hand-drawn by expert baristas, the flat white at Costa Coffee really is a work of art. Visit the nation's favourite coffee shop and enjoy one today. The question, what is your favourite branded coffee shop, was asked. See costa.co.uk for full details.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, work from home on a Friday jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, Soho jobs, Shoreditch jobs. Keep me away from from the central line jobs. Banking jobs, building jobs, never ever boring jobs. Small jobs, big jobs, lunch in Borough Market jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
For up to 50% off a choice of floors and beds. For an extra 20% off selected ranges. For first-class fitting.
Morning.
For 0% free credit with no deposit. For a nice surprise.
Ooh.
For bringing home a bargain. For heaven at long last. Carpet Right. For life. Up to 4 years interest-free credit. Minimum spend applies.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See theaa.com for details.
You could find a fiver, a tenner, a 20, or even a crisp 50 inside the Sun on Sunday. That's right, cash. Yes, real banknotes inside the paper. We're giving away a wallet-busting amount of cash this weekend only in the Sun on Sunday. It pays to read The Sun. T's and C's apply.
This ad is made from 100% recycled commercials. Just like Smart Water's
all new
bottles are made from
100% recycled
plastic.
What's that number again?
100%. Every Smart Water bottle is made using recycled plastic. And because it's still
100%
recyclable, the plastic will be used again
and again.
Smart Water, now in a 100% recycled plastic bottle. Label and cap 100% recyclable, but not made from recycled plastic. Yet. We're working on it.
Welcome to Cathay Island. We hope you've enjoyed flying Cathay Airways. Oh, and Cathay, congratulations on the Euro Millions win.
This Friday's Euro Millions jackpot is a massive £26 million. That's dream come true money. Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Your numbers make amazing happen. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet, developing story out of Gap Inc. A new CEO, Gap Inc. naming Sonia Singhal as CEO. Also, just getting word from Costco's second quarter revenue beats the highest estimate. Costco shares up right now by 1.6%. Again, a beat out of Costco, shares up by 1.6%. A down day on Wall Street with the Dow, the S&P and NASDAQ all declining. S&P down 106 points today. That was a drop of 3.4%. Dow tumbled 969 points, a drop there of 3.6%. And NASDAQ was down 279 points for the NASDAQ Composite Index. That was a drop of 3.1%. 10-year yield 0.91%. Gold up $2, up $34 the ounce, up 2.1%, $16.71. And crude West Texas Intermediate down 1.7%, $45.96 for a barrel of WTI. Again, down 1.75%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
You got me, I know you know. You got me jerking back and forth.
So yeah, the market's definitely going back and forth, and today was a down day, a bearish day. Back with us, one of our favorite guests to really talk about the markets, but really more specifically to drill down into specific names. He's a value investor, which, as you all know, has not been an easy strategy for some time, until kind of lately.
Yeah, maybe he'll value coming back. We'll see.
Exactly. Let's bring in John Thompson, CEO and Chief Investment Officer at Vilas Capital. He's on the phone from Chicago. So, John, nice to have you back with us. This market environment, I don't know. What do you make of it?
You know, it's so volatile. It's the market's obviously, you know, some days thinks, you know, we'll find a cure and this will be a short-lived problem, and other days, you know, it's the Spanish flu pandemic coming.
And so, as an investor, first of all, you sound pretty down about all of this. I mean, are you worried about the market? Are you worried about being an investor in this sort of situation?
Well, the question is, how much is this going to spread over the next, few months or what have you? And honestly, from what I've been reading, is the cases outside of China are doubling like every day or every week. I'm sorry. So, if you run the math, we could have a few million people infected with this worldwide in a couple months. And, that'll obviously scare the market. The economy will slow down significantly. So that's on the negative side. On the other hand, the market is remarkably cheap, at least my part of it, the value part of it. Our stocks are trading, a lot of them we have, one of them at 4 times earnings, 5, 6, 7, PEs of really low. And so, if you can weather this downdraft over the next month, 2 months, 6 months, whatever it is, looking out a year or 2 years, I think these are excellent prices for stocks. So it's sort of this, what's your time frame and pain threshold going to be, or question.
Well, John, how do you, and I want to, we're going to drill down into more, specifics and stuff here, but I do wonder, this was a market environment, equity market environment, specifically before the virus, concerns really picked up momentum here in the United States, that nothing seemed to faze the equity investor, and we continue to hit, record highs, despite people saying this is an expensive market. This doesn't make sense. I'd love to see some kind of pullback and, some kind of correction to make valuations make more sense with the corporate earnings backdrop and the economic backdrop. So are we at that point, or because of the virus, maybe it's a whole different backdrop that we need to be considering?
Yeah. A month or two ago, the economy was booming. It looked like it was going to accelerate. My quarterly letter that went out in early January was predicting interest rates would rise. And so this pandemic or whatever we're having is clearly slowing the economy down. Anything travel related, entertainment related is really going to get hurt fundamentally. That doesn't mean these companies are going to go to business. It just means their business for the next few months is going to be terrible. But I think the strange thing is that the most expensive stocks have actually held up the best in this correction here. The banks, insurers, auto companies, those types of things have fallen dramatically and much faster than sort of the darlings. So this reminds me, frankly, a lot of, and even going back to January, the late 90s, where you had, 30 or 40 stocks that were, really expensive and going straight up, and then you had the rest of the market going down at the same time. And so we're kind of we're still in that mode where, the Googles and Apples of the world are significantly outperforming Bank of America and Citibank and those kind of things. So it's sort of a weird dynamic. I think what will eventually happen is that people will say, Viacom, which is our biggest holding, at 4 times earnings is a good deal. People are still going to watch CBS and Showtime and what have you.
And so, were you in a position, John, where you're putting new money to work in a Viacom or other names?
Yeah, we have been slowly. We own 4 banks in the UK, all Barclays, Royal Bank of Scotland, HSBC, etc. And they're on average trading with about a 7 or 8% dividend yield and about half a book value. I mean, that's a remarkably good deal. Yeah. And they're going down, and we've been buying them. I bought them today. But it's trying to catch a falling knife to some degree. But at some point, I mean, Royal Bank of Scotland is actually at the same stock price with no splits that it was at the bottom of the market in 2009.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so
all right.
it's a big move down. Yeah.
So, John Thompson, stick with us. We're going to chat a little bit more about some other names, including some names we've talked to you about before. John Thompson is the CEO, Chief Investment Officer of Vilas Capital Management. Joining us on the phone from Chicago, he's going to stick with us as we make our way through the fourth day. I just saw a headline that came out after the close that said it's the fourth consecutive day with a 2.8% or more move either way.
Yeah, right.
Amazing.
So talk about volatility. Traders love it, right? Because this is where they get to have some fun in the market, but it has been
I don't know how much
certainly
fun
not a
it's
consistent trend. All right, we're going to come back with John Thompson. You are listening to Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Wall Street's pendulum swung back to losses today of about 3 to 3.5%. They came within a fraction of wiping out yesterday's gains in what has been the most volatile week of trading for the S&P in about 9 years. The Dow fell 970 points, the Nasdaq 279, the S&P 106. The rising number of coronavirus cases has shaken investor confidence despite efforts to try to contain the outbreak. One money manager says investors worry the economic effects of the virus might be worse than they estimated. It certainly worked out that way for travel stocks today, with United and American shares down 13%, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line shares down 16%. Travelers are canceling plans because of the virus. Boeing shares got no lift at all from news. The head of the FAA says the first recertification flight for the 737 MAX is just a few weeks away. The model's been grounded for about a year. I'm Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscribe.
We've all been in one, but how much do you really know about black cabs? For instance, did you know that a black cab has to be tall enough to accommodate an individual wearing a bowler hat? That's a lot of space for you and your briefcase. Or that Free Now drivers can use the bus lanes, the perfect getaway to make your meeting in time. And with 2-minute central London pickups, you needn't waste time searching for a taxi. Just download the Free Now app today and take the hassle out of getting round London.
They don't chant your name when you give blood, or sing songs about you. But patients and their families will remember you forever. Because your blood can change their lives. We need more blood donors in Tooting, the West End, and Edgware. Bleed for London. Join us today at blood.co.uk.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn. Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
Down the right side of the lane, stops at the elbow, jumper, up and good!
TuneIn is your destination for college basketball, and it's free. This week we have a must-hear game. North Carolina at Duke.
For the win! No!
Oh, tapped up by more! And in at the buzzer! More banks it in!
This Saturday, tip-off is at 6 p.m. Eastern. With college basketball tune-in, hear every call from games around the country live. Search College Sports to listen free today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Listen, as a hiring manager, I've got to tell you, the best job candidate isn't always the typical candidate. Sometimes they're a grad of life.
Meet the grads of life. Young adults of unique determination and experience. An ideal fit for your company in an entry-level position, internship, or mentorship. They might not have every qualification you typically look for, but they're exactly who your company needs.
Sometimes the best candidates aren't the ones you're used to.
Go to gradsoflife.org to learn how to find, cultivate, and train this great pool of untapped talent. Brought to you by the Ad Council and gradsoflife.org.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
Are you seeing a lot more buying power on the part of younger people in China?
Financial news made in Asia for use everywhere.
It is a bit of a waiting game.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live to New York, Bloomberg 1130. To Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 99.1. To Boston, Bloomberg 106.1. To San Francisco, Bloomberg 960. To the country, Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Coming up, we're going to continue our conversation with John Thompson out at Vilas Capital Management. I want to talk to him about some specific names he may be looking at or not looking at these days in this very volatile market. But first, let's get back to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on what's going on after the close. Hey, Charlie.
Indeed, lots going on after the close. Jason Kelly. Going to begin with Starbucks headlines on the Bloomberg Professional Service right now, just providing an update on the coronavirus situation in China. It says it sees no perceptible signs of the virus impact on its U.S. operations. Also says its China operations showing early signs of recovery, and it does believe that the impact to operation over the virus is temporary. So keeping an eye on Starbucks for you after hours. Also, we've got Costco out with earnings. It reported EPS for the share for the second quarter, or EPS per share for the second quarter that beat the average analyst estimate. February sales also getting a benefit from demand on coronavirus concerns. Shares a little change right now, up by just about 0.2%. Gap also in the retail group. Big news there. It has named its Old Navy leader, Sonia Singhal, as chief executive officer. The apparel retailer looking to reverse falling foot traffic and sales as it pivots to a new strategy. We've got shares of Gap Inc. trading lower now by just about 7.9%. Steep losses for stocks today with the Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ giving up much of yesterday's gains. The Dow down 969 points, down 3.6%. S&P 500 index down 106, down 3.4%. NASDAQ lower by 279. That was a drop of 3.1%. Volatility sparked by the spread of the coronavirus woes continues to grip financial markets. Anna Nikolaevsky is Chief Investment Officer at Axel Capital Management.
I think that there's going to be a revenue hit in many industries, but in a lot of cases, particularly if you look at auto dealers, if you need a part for your car, you're going to go out and buy it because you have to go to work at some point. I think that the service industry will have a very large hit in the beginning, but at some point there's going to be definitely suppressed demand. A lot of events are obviously being canceled right now, but they will ultimately be rescheduled.
And a tough day for a lot of interest rate sensitive names. JP Morgan Chase, for example, down 4.9%. Citigroup shares down 5.8%. Bank of America down 5.1%. Wells Fargo shares lower by 6%. Recapping losses for U.S. stocks with the S&P down 106, down 3.4%. Gold up today by 2%, $16.69 the ounce. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Massar along with Jason Kelly. We're talking with John Thompson. He's the CEO and CIO at Vilas Capital. He's joining us on the phone from Chicago. So listen, John, you and I have talked a lot over the last few years, and I do wonder, I know you're not in Tesla anymore. Ultimately, you got out of it. You were shorting it for a long time. I know 2019 wasn't an easy year to short Tesla. When did you finally get out, and how tough a trade was that ultimately?
Well, we ended up covering it earlier in 2019 in the summer and made a fair amount of money. And then I started re-shorting it later in the year, foolishly in hindsight. And then it rallied, and I think we covered it in early January, but it was around $450 when we did it. So, but a lot lower than it is today. Thank goodness. So,
is it a case, John, at this point? And then we'll move on to some other names. But is it a case of you can't fight kind of the momentum that you saw in Tesla? Do you still fundamentally feel like there's a lot of questions out there when it comes to that company?
Yeah, I would say it's like we were talking earlier, it's a sign of the times when you have stocks going straight up with fundamentals that are, they're selling a lot of cars, but they're not making much money. They actually lost a lot of money last year. And yes, people are on the margin choosing electric cars to some degree, but out of a 100 million car market in the world, they sold 375,000 cars. And even so, I mean, the growth is, they're growing, but it's still a very small company relative to its market cap. But you look at Virgin Galactic and all these other kinds of names that are sort of similar, where they're trading very much like stocks did in the late 90s, and I think that's scary for that part of the market. But, we, as a value investor, the best period of my career, was from 2000 to 2002. Yeah. We went up when the market was going down, and I think a similar type trade is coming. I just don't know when it's going to start.
Right. John, talk to me about CVS in this market, because obviously CVS seems top of mind for a lot of people when they're thinking about preparing or somehow getting ready for this virus, depending on which twists and turns we see next. How do you feel about that name, given valuation, et cetera?
Well, we own both CVS and Walgreens, and I think they're both relatively equally well prepared or set up for this, what we're going into. If people get sick, they're going to need more cough syrups and this and that and hand wipes and whatever, and it's right there. You can go get it yourself. You don't need to wait for Amazon or what have you. So I think their stocks are trading at roughly 8 times earnings each, and I think they're going to do great. And yet, they're both down significantly in the last couple months. So I think fundamentally, again, there's this divorcing of the fundamentals and the stock prices on both sides. It's as if there's a bubble and an anti-bubble in the market at the same time.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, no doubt about it. John, always love checking in with you, so I really appreciate your time this afternoon. John Thompson is CEO and CIO at Vilas Capital Management, joining us on the phone from Chicago. I do want to talk a little bit about Starbucks, because a flurry of headlines, and specifically talking about the impact on China. It is providing an update on their situation, says February China comp sales are down 78% versus a year ago. That's not a of surprise. You and I were talking in the break when we saw these, headlines crossing that, it was a shutdown in China, essentially, of their society.
Did you see what that translates to from a revenue perspective in the second quarter or overall? Virus impact of $400 to $430 million in lost revenue.
Right, but it also, and it says it's unable to forecast impact in the markets outside of China. Some planned store openings in China likely deferred. The other thing is, we have a story by our Leslie Patton saying about Starbucks that every 8 minutes they are cleaning their U.S. store. Those are 14,000 U.S. locations, and those workers at those locations are being told to wipe down busy areas of the store, ideally every 8 minutes. And they say if that can't be achieved, stores shouldn't go more than 30 minutes without being cleaned.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people thought we were crazy as we were, like, everybody's walking in and Jason and I are cleaning our keyboard and everything around us.
Purelling, doing everything, refusing to shake hands with people. Social distance, people. Social distance.
It's an easy way to fend off the virus. We're just saying. All right, you're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Co-master Jason Kelly. We do want to get another check, though, on world and national news headlines. Ed Baxter in San Francisco, you cleaning down your keyboard and stuff, Mr. Baxter?
Absolutely. Good. And your governor, Andrew Cuomo, is saying no hugs or kisses during this season. I'll get there in just a second. Elizabeth Warren has dropped out of the presidential race.
I was told at the beginning of this whole undertaking that there are two lanes, a progressive lane that Bernie Sanders is the incumbent for and a moderate lane that Joe Biden is the incumbent for. And there's no room for anyone else in this.
But lanes are clear now, those lanes anyway, for Democrats to decide between Sanders and Biden. Senate has passed the $8.3 billion coronavirus funding bill. It has already passed the House. The president has promised to sign it. San Francisco confirms 2 coronavirus cases, and the cruise ship that was due to dock in San Francisco today is being held off the coast with testing kits being dropped by Coast Guard helicopters, 3,500 people on board. World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus says he is concerned. There's a long list of countries that are not taking the outbreak seriously enough. But as Jason and Carol were talking in New York City and New York, the governor, Andrew Cuomo.
During this season with coronavirus, you want to be take precautions. Don't shake hands. Don't hug. Tell the other person so you don't offend them.
Yeah, more than 95,000 people have been infected and over 3,200 have died worldwide from the virus. And just a side note, with shelves emptying of disinfectants and hand sanitizers due to the virus, Texas-based distiller Tito's is warning customers that vodka is still best for drinking and not for hand sanitizing. Global news, 24 hours a day. I guess that makes sense. In San Francisco, I'm Ed Baxter. This is
Hey, y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company.